because I think it helps us see very clearly exactly what racism, white supremacy is all about. Are there any people who were shocked by the verdict? Well, we had some very aware and astute people. How many people were hoping, in spite of it, that it would turn out different? Absolutely. Right. Everybody was hoping that it would turn out different. But basically, the elements in the case were simply a black man who was entering his house and some police officers, people who were uniformed and referred to themselves as police officers, uniformed with guns, decided that he was a black man, and to stop him, it didn't take 2 bullets, it took 41 shots, and 19 that entered his body, some of which entered his body when he was on the ground. And it was decided that this was nothing to do with race. Is that correct? It had nothing to do with race, and that it simply was a misunderstanding or a misperception. They thought that his wallet or his keys, perhaps, were guns. Those of us who have been looking at racism for a long time, some years ago, I wrote a paper on justifiable homicide. The meaning and the symbolism of justifiable homicide in the system of racism, white supremacy. And I believe that it is very, very important for black people. I'm a psychiatrist, and I understand the importance of having in-depth understanding of your environment. To have a little bit of knowledge about the environment is not sufficient for people to function in a highly effective manner. People have to have an in-depth understanding of their environment. It's almost more important to have, well, it's equally important to understand the physical environment. Like if you were in the desert and you didn't understand what it was like being in the desert, your chance of surviving well would be limited. Or if you were in a rainforest and you didn't understand what a rainforest was really all about, your chance of functioning effectively is surviving. Similarly, if you are in a system of racism and you think it's a system of democracy, you can be in total trouble. And sometimes if you want to oppress people, you want to make certain that they are confused about the environment, and you spend a lot of time trying to confuse them, telling them it's one thing when it actually is something else. And I maintain that if we understand what racism is all about, our blood pressure will stay more normal. Because each time we're shocked by something that happens within the system, our blood pressure goes up. We see some black people die from high blood pressure, stroke, and kidney disease because of hypertension. And hypertension is related to stress. Now, you can be in a stressful environment, but if you have a lot of understanding about what that environment is all about, you see that it's just like if you work in a zoo and you work in the reptile department, in the reptile house, and you were responsible for taking care of snakes who were rattlesnakes or other poisonous snakes. And because you understood who those animals were, who those reptiles were, how they function, what they do, what their characteristics are, then you probably could have a lot of success functioning with them because you're not acting like a snake or a rattlesnake is a kitty cat. You see, you relate one way to a kitty cat and you relate an entirely different way to a rattlesnake. So, understanding what racism is all about. And I've said this on numerous occasions when we have people here who haven't been here before. I started really trying to understand racism when I was training in psychiatry at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. And seeing black patients, the people who trained us were white psychiatrists, and they really had no interest in black patients. As a matter of fact, they told us that black patients couldn't benefit from psychotherapy. Now, talking to black people, I mean, well, a few black psychiatrists in training at that time, but they would say that black people did not have the intellect to benefit from psychotherapy, and they could just benefit from medication. Well, that didn't compute for me, and I wanted to understand what was happening, what was making black people ill. Freudian psychoanalytic theory was the dominant thing that we were taught. My brain computer said that does not compute, but you have to learn it in order to, regurgitate it back. But my brain computer said that did not compute. So talking to black patients, I became impressed that racism was something really significant in the past experience of all the black people. I mean, you can't talk to a black person that, let's say are in psychotic denial, that will say that racism doesn't impact any aspect of their lives. So, trying to understand racism so that I could really be a more effective psychiatrist. I met a gentleman who lives here in the District of Columbia, Neil Fuller Jr., and he had been writing about racism. And I met him at a social event. He was sitting on the other side of the room talking to some people. He said, racism is a system. And from the time I heard that, I knew it was a very, very significant concept. And basically what he said, that racism is a system, and I wish that I could make every black person memorize this, that it is a system. It's not just somebody saying black people shouldn't go to this toilet, or they shouldn't go to this school, or get in the back of the bus or the train. He said it is a system, and the system is global, and the system functions in every single area of people's activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. How many people saw an article recently in the paper about black people getting mortgages to buy homes? You can see discrimination there. Black people in education, black children more frequently being disciplined and put out of school compared to white children. So Fuller said it is that racism white supremacy. This is what I wanted to understand as a psychiatrist as to what was making black people sick. And Neely Fuller comes along and he has been writing about it, and he said, this is my understanding of what it is. It is a system, economic, and it functions in all of these areas of people's activity. Now this I consider, next to Dr. Du Bois saying the problem of the 20th century is the question of the color line. I consider that to be the most profound thing that was said in the early 20th century. That was 1903. In Mr. Fuller started writing around 1956 and 57. He said, this color line is not something that's just abstract. It's not just something that people are doing to be mean. This is Du Bois, and this is Fuller. And Fuller said it is a system of behavior. And that system of behavior is for the purpose of maintaining a power equation of white over non-white. Now, as I said, to me, this is one of the most significant things said in the 20th century, and this is also a very profound idea about what is happening on this planet. And Mr. Fuller said he started thinking about racism when he was on a radar site in Japan during the Korean War. So I met Mr. Fuller in 1967, and he had 3,000 pages of handwritten material, not sloppily written, some of the most neat printing you'll ever see in your life. And I was so impressed, I said, this has to be published. And I had a colleague who was training in orthopedic surgery, Dr. Carl Hutchinson from Chicago. He was training at Providence Hospital, Howard University, and he said, I will type the 3,000 pages. And he typed those 3,000 pages between surgical cases. Now that to me was a profound act. And so Welsing said, this material has to be published. And it took 17 years, 1984. So we finally got it published, and it's a textbook for victims of racism. It's got a long title. United Independent Compensatory. Oh, yeah, this is a wonderful student. Her copy is falling apart. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. A textbook, workbook for thought, speech, and action for victims of racism, white supremacy. Neely Fuller Jr. I put his phone number on the board. Neely Fuller Jr. Area code 202-484-5461. Calling and ready to get a copy of his work. So what I came along and said, well, this is profound, Mr. Fuller. Why? Why would it happen? Why, if there is a global system of racism, white supremacy, and perhaps there are other people in the room who have been outside of this area of the world. I've been outside of this area of the world, you know, a place they call Europe. Black people used to think, oh, there's no racism in Europe. Or if I can just get to Paris, there'll be no racism there. See, we've had many black people who tried to escape to Paris, from Baldwin to Richard Wright, to all the people who went in the early part of the 1900s, mid-1900s. People hoping they could get someplace where there was no racism, or there's no racism in Mexico, you think. But really, every place I had been, there were dimensions and aspects of racism, white supremacy. So wherever you go, in the handout, I think the last thing I put in the handout is an article from the New York Times, maybe yesterday, talking about South Africa, where everybody, apartheid is over in South Africa, yippee, no. Apartheid is not over in South Africa. This is an article where the black people in South Africa who have some control over the government, people are complaining about racism, white supremacy in the media that they have no control over because people who classify themselves as white control. And in spite of the black majority, and in spite of the government, they are still putting stereotypical kinds of images and discussions in the major newspapers in South Africa. So, as far as I was concerned, my experience was that indeed it was global. And I simply said, well, why would such a a system exists on planet Earth. You see, because I believe, I'm going to tell you, if we don't understand what racism is, and if we're not able to dialogue about how many people saw Nightline last night, where Ted Koppel was talking about the millions of people on the continent of Africa that are infected with HIV. Black people are being wiped out while we call ourselves Afro-Americans, focusing on our identity in the continent of Africa, and that continent is being denuded of people as we speak. How do people look at cable history channel? I hope everybody's looking at what happened to, now the white people are putting the history of what happened to the Native Americans and the wars against the Native Americans, and how the Native American people had been lied to, systematically lied to, treaty and treaty brokers, while they were being removed off of the land. These are all very important things that we should pay attention to, you see, and not be too busy going to the disco to really understand something serious is happening on this planet. So the question why is a question that ought to be on everybody's mind. And little children, the brilliance of little children, they don't come here stupid. You see, when little children start asking why, well, why? Mommy, why, Daddy? You see, tired parents may say, shut up. Rested parents will say, well, I may not know the answer, but that's a good question. You see, why causes the brain computer to digest, go over the sensory material that has been brought in, meaning I want to understand. I want to understand the environment. I want to understand, well, why are you telling me to go to bed early? If the child wants to understand, well, what is this all about? Explain it to me so that I will really understand this world I have been born into. So why would this power equation of white over non-white? You see, now somebody might be sitting thinking, well, what has this got to do with theology? This has got everything to do with the Diallo killing and the Diallo verdict. It has everything to do. You see, instead of black people getting, oh, they killed another black man. You see, we march and we demonstrate, and then we wait for another week until another person is killed. You see, because right after Diallo was killed, what happened? Another black man was killed in the same neighborhood. You see, and prior to that, somebody else was killed. This is ongoing. But we tend to, as long as we don't understand system, and system is simply the context in which events are occurring. And so you have a series of events happening within this framework, then you want to understand, well, hey, what is this framework so that I can understand why these events are occurring? In other words, they don't have, I guess, on Mars, they don't have driving while black. You see, maybe in some other galaxy other than the Milky Way, they may not have driving while black. So we want to know on this context on planet Earth, why are there Diallo killings, why are there driving while blacks, why is there mass level incarceration of black people, why are millions of people being killed on the continent of Africa, why are thousands of people being killed in this area where HIV just happens to be black. So I said, why? Why would this occur? And be scientific, this has got to be your favorite question. Why is it happening? Why is it happening? Not, well, it's happening, okay. You see, and if people want to keep you oppressed, and this is an expression in the culture. They used to say about slaves, yours is what? Not to reason why. Yours is but to do what I tell you to do, or die. Isn't that significant? Yes. Meaning, don't ask why am I beating you. I'm beating you. Now do what I tell you to do. Yes, shut up. Do what I tell you to do. Don't say, why would you do this to me? I'm a human being also. Shut up. But if you're going to be free, you've got to make this question your favorite question. Turn down the stereo. Say, why is this happening? Why is this happening? So, because as I said, I wanted to figure out how to help black patients get well. And since everybody had in their history something about racism, and I said I got to understand racism and what do they say? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I kept saying fly, and then I ran into Neely Book, who said it's a system. It is a system, it is in all these areas of activity, and it is about thought, speech, and action. Certain patterns of thought, certain patterns of speech, certain patterns of action to make this power equation of white over non-white. And so raising the question why, I started thinking about, since it's global, we are on planet Earth, and basically the system, the way that it expresses itself was saying certain things. It was saying, number one, that the black, brown, red, and yellow people were minorities. Is that correct?
Yes.
Everybody passed that question on the exam. But I thought about, what I had learned in school, being taught by white people. On this planet, fewer than 1/10 of the people on the planet are white, and the black, brown, red, and yellow people are the majority. That's that. You see, so when people lie, you have to say, now this is important. If somebody is saying the majority is a minority, you have to say, now this must be important because it was necessary to lie about it. You see, now you've heard white people recently talking about by 205 whites are going to be the minority. Do you hear them say we're the minority? You don't hear them jumping up and down talking about we're the minority. We're the coming minority. No. Clinton recently said, well, in the future, nobody's going to be a majority. Well, that's not true. See, isn't that significant? He said, maybe a month ago said nobody's going to be a majority. But they call us non-white people all along. So non-white is the majority on the planet, and it is going to be, if not already, the majority in this area of the world. So that was one thing that was constantly being talked about. Another thing that was talked about was this fabulous issue about genetics. Genetics. Black people were being said to be genetically what? Inferior. See, these are things that we constantly talk about. And so I just remembered what I was taught in undergrad, being a biology pre-med major and being in medical school in genetics, that the ability to produce color, black, brown, red, and yellow people, are not genetically weak, they are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Has everybody heard the expression? So you may, what? Be a literature major, history major, and you may say, I don't know anything about genetics. That's not true. How many people have heard, don't marry anybody darker than yourself? Don't lie. It's very important. If you haven't heard it, you haven't been on the planet. You see, people still go by that kind of code. Is that true? Yes. See, that little weak answer. Come on. See, the truth is going to set people free. The truth is going to actually set people free. You will be amazed at how powerful. Truth is almost like a laser. You can have a whole room full of people who classify themselves as white. And a few words of truth will keep them all calm. So you just start talking about white as a minority on the planet. See, that's not putting down anybody, that is a fact. If you talk about genetic recessive status, you don't hear a peep out of anybody. See, if you talk about affirmative action, you see, there's some fundamental facts. I debated William Shockley, that was back in 1974. I'm really not that old. And Dr. Charles Murray wrote the bell curve. These people are very busy talking about black people are genetically inferior in terms of intelligence. I didn't go to debate them with any testimony. Let me show you these testimonies. No. All I said was, I'm going to talk about why you have to talk about black people's genetics. And school was out. So that's a fact. School was out. I think there were 1,500 people. University of Toledo, Charles Murray, Belper, and Cress Welsing. There's the two of us on stage. And school was out. Just talking about, Dr. Murray, we're going to talk about why you have to talk about black genetic inferiority. And you have to talk about it because white, not according to Cress Welsing's genetic science, but according to your own genetic science, is a genetic recessive trait. Which is the same thing that black people know. They say, don't marry anybody darker than yourself. And it's not just black people here. It's people of color all over the planet who have been exposed to racism, white supremacy. Like I started to, well, let me just drop that. Okay. All over the planet, people of color who have been exposed to white supremacy have had the color sickness virus put into their brain computer because trying to look more like power, and that's quite understandable, trying to look more like power, thinking that this will allow you to be more accepted. And I can feel the vibe right now, just like you get off on that. But we have to keep reminding ourselves that it is the truth that is going to set us free. Everybody, every black person, regardless as to their color, they need to embrace themselves and respect themselves. But if we have ideas that are in our computers from the system of racism, see, white supremacy will put into the minds of the global majority. These are 9/10 of all the people on the planet. The black, brown, red, and yellow people. So if you put ideas in their heads about they are not valuable because they have skin color. And the thing that has most value is white. Then the 9/10 will be holding up the system for the 1/10. Did you think about that? The 9/10 will have almost more power holding up the system than the 1/10. It could be the reverse. What if all the 9/10s were embracing themselves and saying, I love myself, I respect myself, no matter what shade of black I am. White supremacy would be out tomorrow. Because if people would, if they loved and respected themselves, they wouldn't be doing anything against their interests. And the system of white supremacy is exactly what it says. Against the interests of people of color. White supremacy is exactly what that means. White is supreme. White is superior. White is better. If I'm walking around as a black person wishing I wasn't black, my own brain computer will be against my development. It won't be working as efficiently for me as if I said, I looked in the mirror and I said, I really gave myself just as I am. I really, really like myself just as I am. That way the computer works in one way. If I'm worshiping what I am not, it works in another way. Okay, so with a majority people on the planet who are people of color, and a minority people who are white, 1/10 white, 9/10 non-white, meaning black, brown, red, and yellow. And speaking about yellow, there's an article, there are just too many pages to the handout, so I had to put some of the articles back. But this past week, there was an article talking about Asians. And the Asians, are supposed to be the model minority. They study and everything. Guess what the Asians were saying? That there's a lot of racism against them. But contrary, we are supposed to be the dummies of the non-white people. Black people are supposed to be the dummies. The Asians are supposed to be the smartest. The Asians said they are penalized for being smart. You see, so no matter which way you go, whether you pass the test or you flunk the test, if you're classified as non-white, white has something for you. See, so that is an important article.
Why were they saying they were penalized? What was the rationale behind that?
Because they're too smart. That's like, that's like a question like, why would, I think that something has happened to basketball since Michael Jordan. You see, if there's no way for the whites to get in, well, let's just credit. Let's kind of push it aside. Now, somebody may say, well, Dr. Welsing is paranoid. I think you understand white supremacy. But, see, as a physician, I raise the question, why are all of these black little children coming up with asthma? We've got an epidemic of asthma amongst black children. Now, I've been a physician for 30 years. We never had an epidemic of asthma among black children. But if you had a white supremacy mindset, and you're mapping genes, and you say, well, now they're dominating basketball, they're dominating baseball, football, and they're coming on in baseball. And I'll be darned, this cavalier is messing with God. How can I knock all of them out of the field? Well, if I can put some kind of antigen in their vaccine so that they will be sensitive to a lot of pollen, and so the little children start being short of breath. I was with a friend on the weekend, and the little 3-year-old, I better get my nebulizer. See, 3. So the little children are short of breath, and if you're short of breath, what happens next? Can I get involved in sports? Now see, the people who have been programmed, this is a Christian name. Oh no, nobody will do that, but we're not in a Christian name. We're a white supremacy nation. A white supremacy world. And that world goes by W-N-N. What does that mean?
Right.
I'm making that up for right here. Whatever necessary means. I'll put B in there. By whatever necessary means. Meaning, hey, all is fair in love and in war. So let's go back to 1 tenth, 9 tenths non-white. And I say, let's make this Europe because this is our planet. At a certain point in the 15th century, what? Christopher Columbus came out of Europe and was the first European to go to some of these places in the southern hemisphere. And other white people followed. Every place they landed, they found what? Colored people. No place else were there white people outside of Europe. And if the men had sex with the women, as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, etc., about that. General Custer asked him, and just look around the room. See how big this white men were. See, this room does not look like a classroom in West Africa. See, you get it? Why do we not look like a classroom in West Africa? Was it the busy Sally Hemings running upstairs to rape Thomas Jefferson? Or was it Thomas Jefferson saying, Sally, if you don't get up here or get down here, you're going to get beat? Okay. So, these white males had sex with the non-white women. And they found out on each and every occasion the children looked like the women, meaning they were what? Non-white. Like what did they say to Gandhi on the train in South Africa? When he came back from law school in England, and he thought that he could get on the train and drive wherever he wanted, and the white people said, I don't care what kind of whatever, you're not white, get off of the train. See, when people look at Tiger Woods, are they saying, well, let's see, I think see a little bit of age. But do you understand what I'm saying? Did anybody look at Sally Hemings even though she was what, the half-sister or whatever or something?
Jefferson's
They even said, and people who classify themselves are very astute at seeing who is and who isn't. Like a Palestinian girl told me some time ago at the University of Maryland. talk about race, I'm from Palestine, we don't focus on color. Right. I said it's not what you focus on. It's what people who classify themselves as white. What do they focus on? And immediately she said, oh, when I'm in Europe. Now I looked at her and she looked, you know, I might say Puerto Rican or something. She said, they look at me and say, oh, are you French? And see, that's a very polite way. They could have said, are you non-white? And see, that would be a little bit gross. So you say, oh, are you French? Which is like saying, where are you from? Really, where are you from? I know you're here, but where are you from? Because they are picking up a little bit, it looks like some melanin. See, straight hair, but the hair is a little kind of heavy, though.
Like Chelsea.
And so she would say, they would say, you know, very deceitfully polite. Oh, are you French? And she would say, no, I'm from Palestine. And she said, they would always say, oh.
Thank you.
And she said she never understood that downscale. She never understood it until somebody comes out of the woodwork and starts talking about race. You see, because all the people of color on the planet who are hoping to be able to slide in into acceptance, and we're not going to adopt that because everybody would rather have it easy than have it hard. So they were not paying attention to those O's. But I said, no, that O meant, oh, okay, I know who you are, I got you in the right box now, because if I don't get you in the right box, if I don't know how to relate to you, I might by accident pick up some of your dark genetic material. And if I carry that back home with me, we will disappear. See, now, if you don't think people who classify themselves as white think this way, I challenge you to ask. I challenge you to be polite and ask them. See, even if that's not important, we've got a lot of so-called black-white marriages that are being pushed to confuse non-white people. But how can you tell that racism exists in those relationships? See, let's say you have a black father and a white mother. When she comes out and says, I don't know how to comb this hair. I don't know what to do with this hair. Or she says to the child, who might be the color of anybody in this room, you're not black. Now, if black was something she loved, why would she say that? Why wouldn't she say to the child, you're black, sweetheart? I like it and you like it. But you're not black and the poor child is standing there. It's completely confusing because it's already in nursery school and being discriminated against. Being pushed to the back of the group, not being accepted, and little children know when they are being accepted and when they're not. And they know when their parents don't want to deal with their pain. When parents just don't hear. But if somebody is saying you're not black, that means black is a negative. So what do you love? the Cress theory, the color confrontation, and racism, white supremacy. Presented it to the section on psychiatry and neurology in the National Medical Association. That's the Black Medical Association. And I said, oh, I understand racism. That racism is related to white people's minority status on the planet and their genetic recessive status. And with these two facts, they become aware that white can disappear on planet Earth. Are you all with me?
Yes, ma'am.
And so black people, we've been programmed to want black to disappear. So you can see we would be confused trying to understand. White, because it is genetic recessive, can disappear. And if people who classify themselves as white decided we do not want to disappear. Now, isn't that an interesting position? We don't want to disappear. I ask white people, do you want your children to be colored? Do you want your grandchildren to be colored? Do you want your great-grandchildren to be colored? Do you want your great-great-grandchildren, great-great-great? I just spoke at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville last month. These white people in the audience, they put in the paper the next day, psychiatrist talks about white supremacy. You see, but white people don't want to disappear. See how quiet? It's almost like we know that. They don't want to disappear. So I simply say, if you don't want to disappear, you have to do certain specific things in economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. With thought, speech, and action to prevent white from disappearing on planet Earth. Now, are there any questions about that? See, white people may want to tan, but that can wear off. A white student told me at DW, Dr. Welsing, we compete to see who can get the darkest in the sun. You know, tan lines. You see, I look white here, but look at here. Yeah, far. But they don't want that to be permanent. Under the system that they have set up of white supremacy, which is a system for white genetic survival on planet Earth. A system to prevent white genetic annihilation on planet Earth. Now, if we don't master that understanding in the 21st century, you can say goodbye, black people.
What will happen to the black people? Mm-hmm. Where will the black people go? You said say goodbye to the black people, so.
It's the same thing. You see all the discussion about the Hispanics are going to be the largest so-called minority. That's because the black men are all incarcerated. You see, so you have genocide going on right here. Genocide is simply preventing a group of people from reproducing themselves. So if you remove the men, the people cannot reproduce.
Okay, now we're getting to the real core of it. Okay, now number two, there are also the violence in the street of young black men getting killed. That, along with the incarceration, like you saw, are going to decrease our production of African American children, and we will probably become a minority if that continues. So those two things we have to address. We got to keep young men living so that they can produce families, and we got to keep them out of the state pens, so they're in jail, so that they can produce families.
You got to understand, what is the driving force? Because if you don't, it'll be like your house is flooded, and you go get a mop. See, if your house is flooded and you go get a mop, and the water keeps getting higher, that's obviously not the answer. You want to find out where is the source of this flooding, so I can cut it off at the source. Otherwise, I'm just mopping up, and being drowned, and eventually the house goes away.
True. True, and that is why I came here, because I feel that you are the source.
Okay. Let's go further. If it is a decision on the part of people who classify themselves as white that they do not want to disappear, and that they are doing certain specific things to prevent their disappearance, how does that fit in with theology? What is the primary source? What is perceived as the primary source of white disappearance? Now, all of this is in the historic record, not written by Cress Welsing. The targeting of black males. Targeting of black males. Now, years ago, the targeting was specifically after enslavement, because when you have people chained and you can beat them to death and kill them at will, then you don't worry about that, because you have them confined to exactly where you want them to be confined, and you can kill them at will. But there was supposed to be an emancipation, and that meant that the black males, along with the other black people, could move around a little more freely. But why did they not have to worry about the black female? It's just basic physiology 101. Females, whether they're white, black, brown, red, or yellow, cannot impose sexual intercourse. Are we all together on that? They can entice, they can influence, they can suggest, but impose means, in the final analysis, to resort to a weapon. If a female approaches a male with a weapon and says, "You're going to have sexual intercourse," and I mean business, and she pulls that child's safety lock off of that weapon, and the male perceives that she is deadly serious, what will happen, gentlemen? You see, the aggression cannot be maintained in the presence of fear. So the female can carry the genetic material, but she cannot impose it in the same way that white men impose their diluting sexual influence on non-white females all over the world. the females cannot impose sexual intercourse. So white people collectively and white males understood it's the black male. And of the people of color, black, brown, red, and yellow, black people carry the most melanin. Brown a little bit less, red a little bit less, yellow a little bit less. So the people with the greatest level of genetic potential can what? Represent a greater threat of white genetic annihilation. And so after enslavement, there was a lot of lynching and castration of black males. There was an exhibit recently in New York about lynching because somebody had collected pictures of lynching. They used to lynch people. The whole white family would be standing around cheering, and people would want pieces of the genitals, and they would put it on postcards and send it through the mail. Nice pictures of lynching. Black man burning, black man castrated, and send the pictures to their family members and say, compelling with love. You see, so that the lynching, and the lynchings would very often take place when class, after they said he was looking at a white people. He was thinking about looking at a white people. He thought he wanted to think about it. I think he was dreaming about it. I could tell he was dreaming about it. You see, the accusations going to a 14-year-old male, like in the tail, or somebody 44 or 80. You see, that became the rationale for lynching and attacking the genitalia. Now, black and other non-white men may do many things. There's no historical record of black men tampering with white men's genitals. They're not threatened by white men's genitals. But it is clear from the historic record, and this would occur also in places like Australia. You see where they cut off the Aborigines' genitals. Again, black people, white people from Europe going to Australia, not just attacking and killing the people, but cutting off their genitals. You see, now you say, well, I don't want to think about that. No. Get yourself together and say, let's put the material on the table. Why would this behavior occur? See, and this is essential for black people to begin talking about putting the dialogue and all those other situations in perspective. So, again, our basic drawing, this is not a man with glasses. This is the male genitalia. And this is the testicles where the genetic material is. Castration fundamentally means to attack the testicles. You see, but the phallus was attacked as well. So, as long as racism, white supremacy is not talked about, and people who classify themselves as white are really, I would say, absolutely afraid to talk about it. Has anybody ever had a white person stand up and give a lecture to black people and say, basically and fundamentally, we're afraid of the black man's genitals? No. All we hear is the black man is a gangster, and he's a criminal, and he's a this, and he's a that, and he's a racist. It's in the paper, in the handout, the black man in Pennsylvania. how they started yelling about him. Now, the white men who killed Diallo were not racist.
We're not racist, right?
Everybody's clear about that.
But this was
But the black man who killed the white people in Pennsylvania, that was a racial hatred. Now, interestingly, it has come out that the black man in Pennsylvania had mental health problems. That's the beginning of the story. The end of the story has not come out yet. Okay? So this critical issue, and this is why I say black people we have to, if I could wave a wand, I would really have us give up marching. I would have us give up singing. I would have us give up carrying placards. Now somebody can say, well, these are effective. Yes, they bring attention. But the Afro-American newspaper for this week had a picture about the people protesting about the end of affirmative action in Florida. And the article says, you see that their affirmative action is going to be defeated. I would have us give up the protest and focus on black people, every single black person be able to speak in terms of an analysis and an understanding of what racism and white supremacy is. That will have more impact. The white people will start saying, they're all saying that racism is about white genetic annihilation. They're all saying all of this is related to the fact that whites are a tiny minority on the planet. Now these people who classify themselves as white will begin to take notice. As long as we're praying, pray at home. See, as long as we're praying and singing, they say, now this is exactly where we want you. So you turn on the TV and you see. They want us clowning, dancing, trashy behavior, and singing, Jesus save us, and that's a white man is. Jesus is supposed to be white. Do you all understand? I'm not knocking that. I'm baptized Baptist Christian Methodist. So what? This is philosophy given to us by white people. Verse what? We have to think 2015. 2010. What do we see ourselves doing as black people? Are we just going to be marching around the graves of all the people who died from HIV? Are we just going to be marching around any black male who is not in prison is going to be walking around on crack? Is that what you see? It's very important to think about. Now, 2010. What am I going to be doing in 2010? What do I want things to look like in 2010? Because based on what you're thinking about 2010, your behavior in 2000 has to take you to where you want to be, unless we are waiting for white people to fix it up. Now, I'm not going to knock reparations, but I would say consult that 6 or 7 series of videos that they have on the History Channel. If the West, whatever they call it, the real West, whatever, you see about the native so-called American people and all the reparations that they were promised. They were supposed to be given thus and so because the black hills were taken. See, think of the promises that we were given. If after 100 and some years they have been able to come forth with 40 acres and a mule, we're supposed to conclude what? They ain't gonna. Do you all understand? See, this is, I mean, we are supposed to wait. Let's look at the data. But if somebody can train you or just keep singing about it, maybe it'll happen in the sweet by and by. Or when I get to heaven, I'll get some free. No. We should be saying, how do we think things ought to be? I'm talking because I believe there should be justice on the planet so people can live in peace. But justice is not something that people who have decided that they need to oppress for whatever reason, need to oppress for the purpose of white genetic survival. Do you think they're going to get off of that? See, this is a nice test you can give to white friends. Invite them to dinner. And before the dessert is served, everybody is saying, ooh, that's really good. Just before the sweet potato pie and coffee. So, you know, I want to ask you about something. You got half white guests and half black guests, white guests sitting on one side and the other side. And everybody is friends, everybody loves everybody. So this is not even dinner table conversation. The white person opens the dialogue. Because the food has been very good. And the black people on their side of the table are saying, So a white person opens a discussion by saying, what do you all mean when you say, Now, see, that's not fantasy. I was actually at a dinner where that happened. Black friend, he could really and whatever he cooked would take you right to heaven. There was a black gentleman married to a white lady. She was at the table and she said, excuse me, what do you all mean when you say, Now that brother was in trouble. But anyway, so they opened the discussion on that side of the table, so now it's time for black people to ask a question for their side. I mean, it's just black and white. And so the black person says, what do white people talk about when there's no black people in it? And all the white people get up and say, I've got to get home. You see, now that will bring conversation to a halt. That would be considered a hostile question. I say you can either be in bed with a white person and raise that question as a black or non-white person, the sexual intercourse will stop, the will will stop. Because that question, what do white people talk about when there's no black people around, is the key to the maintenance of white supremacy. As a white professor at American University told me, Dr. Welsing, I hate to admit it, but on all social occasions, not some, all social occasions, when it's only white people. I didn't force this out of her. I just talked about racism and then her mouth is open up. There is negative discussion discussion about black people, and the assumption is that everybody who is present goes along with the discussion. Because they're talking about the maintenance of this survival equation. This is a survival equation.
Are they conscious of the fact that that's what they're talking about?
Do I have it in here? Consciously or subconsciously determined.
Could you speak a little bit about that subconscious component? Because I'm pretty sure the average white person would not be able to articulate as well as you had this system. So therefore, they are doing it, but they don't know that they're doing it.
No, they don't consciously think about it. See, I hear white people say, you know, I never thought about it like that. I never thought about it consciously. You see, but most of what we do as human beings is subconsciously determined. Only a minimum, no matter what it is you think you're thinking about. That's only 1/10 of the brain computer process. The rest is subconsciously determined. You see, if a white person said, I always knew I liked chocolate with nuts. I never thought anything about it. I just want chocolate, and the darker the chocolate, the better. See, black people do not space out about chocolate with nuts. Oh, Anthony, I forgot to bring. Student over here, you can get up and talk about how could I forgot everything. Sometimes I say this is a senior moment or whatever. Student Anthony Jones brought this, what is it, chocolate cream?
Willie spread.
Willie spread.
Isn't
Slip Willie. You see like a little tin of dark brown stuff that you can spread over your willy. That you might say, well, it's a willy. See, in the wildest, Mrs. Hardy brought it up to my office. I mean, I guess I wasn't sitting down. I was fainting. You see, in other words, who is thinking that white people are producing and selling? How much was it? $6? Some dark brown that you can spread over your penis. The little white penis. See, in other words, the gentleman is right. In other words, I'm sure that they're not thinking. They're not thinking when they produce that necessarily, but they might. I don't know. If I spread this over, this makes me look like a black man. But the point is if somebody makes that for $6, then it's people who are buying it. But do we sitting over on Georgia Avenue know that people are focusing in this manner? You see, but if they will make some chocolate to put on a white penis, that means that they are in envy of black genetic knowledge. So that, Mr. Diallo, black man coming home from work, I guess, getting ready to put keys in door. The envy and the fear of genetic annihilation makes the black man a target, conscious and or subconscious. Now see, when people know immediately a black man shot white people, and he was selecting white people are hysterical. They can immediately, it's racial, it's hate, help. But when they are the agent, even though you have repeated cases of this every week, they go into what? It has nothing to do with mass denial. But what I have said is, because of the fear of genetic annihilation, because it is the black male that is carrying the most genetic material compared to the brown, compared to the red, compared to the other, that he is consciously and or subconsciously perceived as the enemy. See, somebody should have said, wait a minute, 4 police people, and none of them can see well? See, 4 people and nobody can see well to distinguish a gun from a wallet. See, in the handout, what's the first thing I have in here? Somebody classified the second one. No, the second thing. The cartoon from
Oh, yeah. That was classic. That
You
cartoon.
see where they have Giuliani saying what? The officer killing of an unarmed citizen was a tragic but understandable. And the person says it was dark outside. His wallet was dark and he was dark.
This says it all. This cartoon just says it all.
So if the fear, this is the Cress theory, the fear that it was genetic annihilation, that he could annihilate me genetically, he therefore has a what? Genetic weapon. And this is why those blind officers, they confront a black man and say, we all thought he had a weapon because he does. And this is the weapon. Do you all understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the weapon they are talking about. So the stories where, a little black male child had a pencil, I thought he had a weapon. It's always, I thought he had a weapon. I thought he had a weapon. There are no cases of black police officers killing white men and saying, I thought he had a weapon. You see, but your subconscious necessity can influence your pattern of perception. You see, which is why black people have to be guilty. You see, the assumption is that they're guilty. Why is it assumed that they're guilty? Think quick, class. They are, see, we think we're in a system of democracy. That's where I started. And so we don't understand that assumption. If we understand we are in a system of what? Of racism, and that's a system about white genetic survival. So that the focus is always on, I have to survive. We have to survive. We have to survive genetically. We have to survive genetically. We have to survive genetically. There's another one. Shoot him if we can. have to survive genetically. We have to survive genetically. So here's this big, tall, black man from Haiti called the Wiener.
Yeah.
We have to beat him down to the ground and jam a stick up his rectum as though it is a white penis. Are you all with me? Now see, if black people, not in Haiti, I don't hate white people. It's not about hating. It's no more than the doctor making a diagnosis of cancer. The doctor doesn't hate, I hate the cancer stuff. No, you don't have time to do that. You want to make an accurate diagnosis so that you know what to do. And if we started saying, well, no offense to anyone, but it's essential that we talk about racism. And talk about it for what it is. A reaction to racism on the part of a victim of racism is not racism. I don't care if that black man said, I hate white people until the cows come home. He is a victim of racism, and he has no power to structure a system. He is a victim no more than if you say the victims of Hitler's Holocaust of Semites, they had resistance in the ghetto. They had Jews arming themselves a little bit, trying to kill Germans. That wasn't anti-Semitism. They were fighting the people who were trying to kill them. So we got a lot of liberal, scholarly black people. Well, now there is black racism. There's not any black racism. If all the black people in the District of Columbia stood up starting at 7:30 tomorrow morning and started singing, they hate white people, do you think that would disturb white people really? All they have to do after a certain point is call up an arrow. Bringing the army back up. It's just like if white people decided right now tonight, whoever's on Howard University campus black, put them in the truck. Take them to the enclosure in Fort Myers, wherever. Could they do it?
Yes.
Could the black majority of the District of Columbia go and round up any white people and take them downtown to a restaurant? No. See, it's very important for us to get our thinking straight. Get our thinking straight. If you become a black billionaire, does that exempt you from racism? And Bill Cosby, whose son is dead. I think he was in a Mercedes. Was he in a Mercedes? Yes. So can a Mercedes save a black person? No. Do you all understand what I'm saying?
I'm sorry, sister.
We are in a system of racism, white supremacy.
I'm sorry.
We are in a system of racism, white supremacy, and it's global, Mr. Mbeki. Mr. Mandela. It doesn't matter where we are. The black people who are suffering in London and getting beat up because they're black. The black people who are suffering in France and getting beat up because they're black. The black people who are in Germany getting beat up because they're black. The people in Austria, the people in Russia. The president Russia, Mr. Putin, said about the Chechens, the Islamic minority so-called group, they are dark and they have to be annihilated. He said they are dark-skinned and they have to be annihilated. He said it. Did anybody say anything about it? See, all this is in the paper. We just try to repeat after me later. Read. Let's say it again. Read. And watching TV. You can't get it on cable. And white supremacy is getting real smart. They could show you every morning the people who are drowning in Mozambique. And then move from that to show you the people who are starving. But no, it's more important. We'll just give them personalities. You know, a little teaspoonful of news and a whole lot of personality. And everybody is laughing, the black people laughing, and the white people laughing, and then I tell myself I look at the news. I get 3 newspapers, 4 constables, stand there at the newsstand and feed 5 or 6. You understand what I'm saying? In order to know what is actually going on around us, yes.
30 days after the spaceship went up, I received the letters.
Well, see, that's a good point.
What was it?
What was the question?
30 days after the spaceship went up, they had all that flooding in Mozambique. See, the question is, and I'm not going to pretend to be the geologist or whatever, but can clouds be seeded so that there will be rain? When they had the Poor People's March on Washington, it rained for 7 days. So that the people were walking around in knee-deep mud. And it never rained like that before or since. So the only question is there enough knowledge? Some people have enough knowledge about producing weather patterns.
Yes.
That's question number 1. And question number 2, if they have the knowledge, would they use it? Which is the same thing as raising the question, can people make viruses? Can people make biological weapons? Why do people make biological weapons if they don't intend to use them? If people are worried about their minority status on the planet, would they make biological weapons to attack the minority?
No.
That's a damn question. If the white population is worried about its minority status on the planet, are white people concerned about their reproductivity on the planet? Are they worried about not reproducing themselves? Yes. So would they make a biological weapon to attack themselves? Well, why would they make a biological weapon? What did I put up here? Now see, I'm envisioning going off and marrying a white man. My computer will not lift that up. Or if somebody's envisioning, I want to really arrive, like a friend of mine many years ago. A black man at Harvard, he said, Francis, a white woman goes with a Harvard degree.
They said that to you? What?
saying. Wait a minute. He raised the brother. He finally became a professor at Harvard. I mean, what's the point of struggling through Harvard? I'm at Harvard. I'm here in Cambridge. What's the point of going back?
The follow-up question to that point is, and you alluded to it earlier, where you pointed out that the 9/10 do more to support the 1/10 in maintaining the system of white supremacy. And I think what you allude to in that example is that here you have the programming that goes into that perpetuation of maintaining white supremacy on the part of people of color.
See, the 9/10, when you have a system of power that's white over non-white, who's in charge?
They're in charge, but we're maintaining it for them.
If they're in charge, they do the programming. And so I'm little black Francis in a ghetto school in Chicago, and who do I'm reading the story about the little princess and the prince. I already finished Dick, Jane, Spot, and Puff. Now I'm on Cinderella, or Goldilocks, or whatever. Do you understand? So that the programming, I'm sure he was sincere. In his own way, sincere. Sincere. Now, white supremacy, if we read enough, we will realize that a part of colonial policy, how to hold down the colony of non-white people. You need some help, so you educate a few people. Educate the men. And then you bring some prostitutes from Europe, but they're white. And because you have programmed intelligent people to believe that they're black and ugly, and black means stupid, and black means the devil, and Jesus is white, and all the little cherubs are white, and Mary is white. And so then I introduce, they're prostitutes, but they're white. And I bring them, and I just put them around. They were struggling there in Paris, prostituting. But now they can come over here and be with the Prime Minister. Isn't that preferable? Some smart mothers probably told, now look, Tiger has written. Now what we do is try to circle that money around, Nicole, and bring that money back to the white family. See, they're not stupid. But we have been deceived, so we don't understand. And so that is a way of controlling. Somebody called me up and asked me to be on a television program just this week. And they want, Dr. Welsing, we want to talk about black and white dating. See, don't hold you all. This is a discussion about military science. See, we don't want to do military science. We want to dance and sing and play. That's why people figure we can do anything we want with this. We got them scratching their head whether they're going to vote Republican or Democrats. In a football game between Team Republicans and Team Democrats, what role does the black person play? The football game. Can we go with that? In a football game between Team Republican and Team Democrat, what role do the black people play? The football league, they toss back and forth while one or the other team scores. The black people are not in it. Is that not what we see happen underneath elections? Now, the black people have, well, no, we have a party. Our party, we don't even have an office, but our party is the party of self-respect and justice. And we try to each day act in the interest of self-love. See how quiet the vibe actually is? Dr. Welsing, you mean I can't join the young Republicans? See, in other words, everybody came out because the discussion was about racism. I've said racism is about white people designing a way that they can survive on the planet. Are they going to help black and other people of color change things? Now, if their brain computer is working, see how quiet it got? That was, oh my God. Do you see, this is what we are waiting for. This is the purpose of Jesus loves all the little children. Red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in his blue eyes. Program somebody at age 3, Cress Welsing at Oliver Baptist Church. You see where everybody else. Program people who are fearful and vulnerable and miserable and haven't decoded the system. That was us. And to say somebody who looks like the slave master loves you is a very powerful message. Now I was going to bring a picture that was in, I guess it was in the New York Times. And it was about Egypt. I'm just going to bring a picture. Egyptian women finally getting some rights to vote. But the picture was of Egyptian court, and people in the court complaining, and the court officers. Everybody looked like the people in this room. See, now, when do you see Egypt portrayed as black people? See, the white museums fighting, well, Egypt is not black. I mean, it is in Africa, but they just slipped up and, you know, gave you an everyday photograph of people in Egypt. Black people. Black people. But what? Meaning, if there was a dude named Jesus, and I said the Lord gave us a clue, his name J-E-S-U-S, and he bodies is just us. We reflect on that. Just us. Waiting on just us. See, this is critical. The Creator made black people the mothers and fathers of everybody on the planet. And the Creator saying, I gave you everything, I made you the parents, now get the house straight. You're waiting for the children. You know how people used to, the children will say, that's a myth. That's a myth. That's a myth. Who's going to save the children? Jesus? I don't want to be, I'm not being offensive to anybody's religion. I mean, are we thinking that white supremacy is going to educate black children? We're sitting in the midst of the destruction of the public school system right here. Are we aware of it? Somebody coming along, oh, we're going to give you a voucher. That's like Jesus said. A voucher from the Congress. We're going to give you charter schools. But we don't set any standards for who runs it. See, but because we are in this mode of waiting for the reparation, waiting to receive as opposed to some elbow grease on that table, let me think about this problem because I got to solve it. If it gets solved, it will be solved by me. Nobody is coming to my aid. Why should they? Based on how they have defined themselves historically. See, it's quiet because in our gut, you mean it depends on us? Just us? See, it's just like white people all over the world. No, all you have to do is come toward here, go to some country around Africa, white people. All you have to do is put in your duffel bag about a few crumbs and just hand them out when you get there. And the people will start following. And you can tell them like Jim Jones, drink that stuff. Or just cite them to go. There are black people in Waco. Do you all understand what I'm saying? Think about the black people who went to Rajneesh out in Oregon, where they said you can have all the sex you want with white women, you can have everything you want to drink. And I personally saw a white man in Lafayette Park signing people up to go. And I got out of my VW and asked the white man, where are you taking these people? See, but it had said you can get all the sex you want, all the, I guess fried chicken was somewhere on the line. Cream cheese. But do you all understand what I'm saying? See, if we don't understand who we are, what the issues actually are, then it's like we're in another world. And constantly wondering, why are we not making any progress? Because our brain computers have been programmed. You're black and worthless. Now here's a white person who loves you. Follow him. Yes.
Dr. Wilson, I was on the internet a few weeks ago, and somehow I got into the Taiwanese website. And from that, I went into the lady website. Anybody that has computers, public library has computers that you use right now. I don't know if you like to look at as long as you want. But I got into the Taiwanese website and went into the lady website. This white man, one white man had such a fan of Tiger Woods and how great Tiger Woods was and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, well, where is the moon going to go? So I kept on trying to get down to, he's got something on the very same website on the Tiger Woods. But to me, it's totally unrelated. I mean, they're not even the same, Tiger Woods and a golfer. They have one thing in common with black male, but Tiger Woods and a golfer, and Tupac Shakur was an entertainer. So I'm looking at this song, and he's just running Tupac Shakur into the ground. And he's nothing like Tiger Woods and so on and so on and so on. And I think we have pictures of Tupac. But I find that interesting, and a lot of things is on that internet. And if you want to find out, just type in white supremacy on the thing. Racist organization, white supremacy, all kinds of things come up, So I find that very interesting.
Well, I do think that if it's a system of racism, white supremacy, then it is doing whatever is necessary to maintain itself. And white people are on the internet talking about racism, white supremacy. If we have been trained to, oh, that's just racist. The system is racism. You see, so people are getting reinforced in their thinking, and this is not about hate. This is about looking at a chessboard and understanding what is happening on the other side of the chessboard. So you can't play chess just looking at your pieces. You've got to be aware of what is happening on the other side of the board. Yes.
I wanted to say something.
Real loud.
I wanted to say something real quickly
Stand
about.
up, I can't hear you.
Be able to stand up, but I wanted to say something real quickly about the strategy Dr. Welsing was talking about. First, just going back to the internet. If you remember, and you can pick it up, it's in the first chapter of the book, Internet for Dummies, that the internet was produced basically to maintain white supremacy. It was produced in the early 60s, and they started with most universities around the world, and they had to be connected via the network. And I even remember back in the 70s when I was in school that there were people who were working on projects funded by DOD, and our school was networked all over the world. And then just recently they made it accessible to everyone else. And it was basically to support the Department of Defense. Now you can extrapolate there the connection between the white supremacy and that statement. And then I wanted to go on to say about experimentation. We always take it in our study group that we work with, that work to take the things that Dr. Welsing says and experiment with. So at a diversity meeting, we began to ask people why they had attended. And one of the white males said there that the reason he decided to participate was because he was sick and tired of everyone else at work on the center assuming that he was a racist. Okay. Now, we understand that doesn't mean he's not one, but this is what he's saying to us. And he talked about how in all conversations, immediately, that they begin to talk about the non-white people and how in some way they're strategizing against the white people. He begins to talk about even the so-called Asians, that they're not saying that they're smart, they're actually saying they're sneaky. And they're after white women. And that the Indian people from India, they're the sand niggers. And he begins to expose this. And at this point, we suggest that this session be taped. And the person who was speaking, I have to admit, was actually apparently the most pro it being taped. But you never know because they're very specific. But all of the other white people refused for it to be taped. In fact, they said they would not participate.